Okay, assembled public, sorry we're running a little bit late. If you would please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. As you, of course, are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Harris, will you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Ms. Bakay. Ms. Craig.
Here.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Here.
Mr. Soto. And President Smith-Waddell.
Here. Councilors Bakay and Soto are excused this evening. Approval of the minutes for February 25th, 2020.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right. Council comments from the public. Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. All right. We have the minutes for February 25th. Ladies and gentlemen, just so you're aware, before I move into the rest of the agenda, after the public comment period, we will have a public hearing to consider an application for an economic development liquor license for the Southern Market site, just a couple of blocks down that way, just so you're aware. That hearing will be sort of encapsulated within the course of the meeting, and we'll address it under the reports requested by council item on the agenda, just so that you're aware. Moving right along, proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition.
Yes, Mr. President. Resolution 18-2020, a resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster, acknowledging the contributions of the Jewish people of Lancaster and our nation, and decrying the rise of anti-Semitism.
Councilor Diaz.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Do you want to talk about it, or?
No, he can read it.
Okay. Council comments from the public. Great. Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Councilor Diaz, if you'd like to say a few words and present the
Yes.
resolution. I believe there is somebody here from Congregation Shirai Shemayim to receive it.
Yes, if he wants to come forward. First of all, I'd like to say that the Jewish community has lived in Lancaster since 1715, and they have brought in the oldest Jewish settlement in the United States. I also would like to recognize the fact that they have contributed so much to Lancaster and all over the country, and I know that it's been very harsh these past few years with the way the violence have had taken over and hurt our community, which I include myself being part of it. So the reason I wanted to bring this forward is because I think there've never been a resolution or a proclamation, and this is why I wanted to do this for the community.
On behalf of Congregation Shirai Shemayim and the Jewish community in general, I want to express my appreciation for the impulse to pass this resolution, or even propose and pass this resolution. And I am grateful, and our community is grateful for the recognition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, if you'll stay there.
Oh.
She's going to bring you down a
Good.
fancy copy. And then, yep. Okay. Millsy is locked and loaded to take a photo.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz, for proposing that very important resolution, and thank you, sir, for being here to receive it. I think we sort of as we are recognizing our various communities and demographics, the Jewish community sort of goes unrecognized in that, and so it's very timely, especially considering all that's going on. So thank you to both of you again. We move now into our public comment period. This is reserved for citizens who have reserved for persons who have contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting. Of course, time limit is 3 minutes. Mr. Harris, do we have any such persons?
Yes, we do, Mr. President. First, we have Nancy and David Lewis.
Ms. Lewis, please. And if you would start by giving your name and the street you live on.
I'm Nancy Lewis, and we live in Akron, but we own a property on North Plum Street, 533 North Plum, one of the condemned properties. And we wanted to thank the city for what you've done so far. A fence went up on Monday to stop some of the intruders from coming into the house, and we just wanted to ask you what the next step is.
Great. I actually think that that's probably a question that either Ms. Carrasco or Mr. Delphs.
Actually, I can take it.
Oh, great, Mayor. Sorry, I didn't see you.
That's all right. I'm here. This is an update that I believe I sent council, but now I'm worried it might be in my outbox to you. But we have contracted with Advos, which is a mediation provider here in our community, to reach out to all of the property owners on Plum Street to help coordinate conversation and action that the property owners would need to take to move this forward. Advos is not representing the city, and Advos is not reporting back to the city about those conversations. This is meant to be an independent means for the property owners to be able to come together to talk about where they might be in the process in relation to their insurance companies and so on, and to jointly develop a plan for how to move forward, because your properties are physically linked together, and it will require, I believe, it will be in the best interest of everyone in order to have a coordinated effort. So Advos will be reaching out. That process of being in touch and moving this forward will be a 4 to 6 week timeline. I would encourage when Chris Fitz contacts you as a property owner that you respond and let him know when a good time would be for everybody to get together. Again, we are not going to be getting reports back about this. We will be paying for their facilitation services, and that's pretty much the end of it. This is really to create a separation between the property owners and the city, understanding that we are the entity that condemned these properties and have done about $30,000 worth of investigation about what was happening, and that report has been shared with all of the property owners as well. So we want you to be able to have freedom of conversation and to be able to come up with a plan.
Okay, then I'll just say thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Next, we have Eileen Gregg.
This is Greg.
I'm Eileen Gregg and live at Steepleview Lofts at 118 North Water Street, Lancaster. I belong to an organization that's called the Lancaster Downtowners. This is a virtual village with over 200 members, most of whom are longtime city homeowners. Last month, I asked for and received permission to conduct an online membership poll on the public art project for the facade of the Library Parking Garage building in Ewell Plaza. After I'd received 50 votes over a 3-day period, I decided this was a large enough sample to be representative of our entire membership, and I ended the poll. I had offered 3 choices for the voting. 1, the original drawing by Hamill Associates, the project architect with offices at 25 East Grant Street. 2, the concept utilizing brightly covered vertical tubing by R&R Design of Miami, Florida. And 3, art done by local artists after the building is constructed. The results were, the Hamill design received 8 votes. The option to add the art after the building is built received 42 votes. The city's choice, R&R Design of Miami, received 0 votes. That's right, there were no votes for R&R Design, the firm the City Council has chosen to construct the facade of the library parking garage in Ewell Plaza. Since that poll was taken, I've learned that the option with the most votes to build the building and add the art later is not possible. This is because the construction process has already begun. I learned that the art must be chosen in advance of the start of construction because the type of surface, whether textured or smooth, is dependent on the type of art to be added to that surface. However, it is not too late for the design by Hamel Associates to be used. The material plan for this design is perforated aluminum that allows air and light to enter the parking garage. Hamel Associates presented its design to the Historical Commission in March of last year. The Historical Commission gave it a favorable review. On October 21, an R&R concept was presented at a meeting of the Historical Commission. Because this concept was not in a final form, as the Commission's rules require, the Commission gave it a formal recommendation of denial in the land development process. On November 12th, City Council disregarded the ruling of the Historical Commission and granted a certificate of appropriateness to the library garage building and the R&R facade art. Some members of Lancaster Downtowners who participated in the poll added a comment explaining why they voted as they did. A North Charlotte Street resident wrote, "I much prefer the Hamel concept. It is much more congruent with the rest of the plaza as it has already been built." An East Orange Street resident wrote, "It is disturbing that the Hamel option that was approved by the Historical Review Board received no publicity." From the West End, I vote for the Hamel design. The designer is local with a prestigious reputation and respect for our historical architecture. A North Duke Street resident wrote, "The Hamel Associates design, conceived by a local architect familiar with historic Lancaster, approved by the Lancaster Historical Commission over the none-approved R&R's garish design, is clearly the less expensive and more appropriate choice for the Lancaster community, the present mayor and city council notwithstanding." An East End resident kept it short and simple. "I vote for the local guy." These comments came from city taxpayers who will be contributing to the cost of the parking garage through parking fees. They deserve to be taken seriously by city officials whose salaries they pay. Their opinions matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Gregg. Mr. Harris, do we have any other public comment?
We do not, Mr. President.
All right. In that case, we move to reports requested by council. There we go. And Mr. Harris, am I correct that the only item on the agenda under this section is the public hearing?
Yes, it is, Mr. President.
All right. All present, we will now open a public hearing to consider the request of Willow Valley Communities for approval of the issuance of an economic development restaurant liquor license for use at 100 South Queen Street, which is the Southern Market Center. First, we will have an introduction by Mr. Chris Dels.
Good evening, councilors and members of the public. We are holding this public hearing tonight to consider the application for an economic development liquor license at Southern Market, which is located at the southwest corner of South Queen Street and Vine. As the applicant, Willow Valley Communities will provide testimony tonight explaining the redevelopment project at Southern Market and its application for a liquor license associated with a planned food hall. I just wanted to take a few moments to state for the record that the city administration fully endorses this application for a liquor license. It is important to note that the city disposed of the property through the redevelopment authority to Lancaster Equity, who has since partnered with Willow Valley to realize an equitable economic development vision at this site. The intent is to bring a unique historic building back into productive use while creating a vibrant space for the community to experience and enjoy. Integral to this concept is the goal of creating a food hall and kitchen that will provide a platform for local culinary entrepreneurs and offer low barrier workforce development. There continues to be a focus through this project on employment opportunities for immigrants and for residents of color. A liquor license is only one component of the overall redevelopment vision, but it is an essential component to ensure the viability of the business model at Southern Market. Having alcohol sales will allow the food hall to compete effectively with other restaurants in the city and the county that serve alcohol. And revenues from those alcohol sales, you'll hear more about this, I believe, from the applicant, will contribute to core building operations and to maintenance of the historic structure as well. In closing, just wanted to reiterate that this project squarely advances the policy goals of extending economic development south of the downtown and promoting Lancaster as a special destination for locals and for tourists and visitors from out of town as well. This is a really, truly exciting project, and we're looking forward to this moving ahead. So thank you for your time. I will be available to answer any questions later in the hearing, if necessary.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Deltz. Will counsel for the applicant please introduce himself?
Yeah, good evening, counsel. My name is Aaron Ziemer. I'm an attorney with Russell Kraft & Gruber here tonight on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Deltz did a pretty adept job there of introducing the application, so with the board's permission, with council's permission, I'll jump right to it.
Hold on just a second. Sure. Mr. Ziemer, could you please take a moment and introduce who's here with you?
Yeah. So John Swanson is here on behalf of Willow Valley Communities, Marshall Snively, Nancy Keeler, and Jonathan Coleman. Thank you. Sorry. I met with a bunch of people as part of this.
Mr. Harris, do they need to be sworn in by anyone in any sort of formal fashion?
If they're testifying.
They should be. Yeah, I would submit that they should.
All right, great. Would you all please stand? And kindly raise your right hands. And repeat after me. My name.
Aaron Ziemer.
Great. Do hereby swear and affirm that the evidence that I am about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. All right. Thanks for bearing with. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and just for the purposes of procedure, do all council members have a copy of this application? Got it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call that Exhibit 1. Mr. Harris, do we have proof of publication for this hearing?
We do.
We're going to go ahead and call that Exhibit 2. All right. Now, sir, Mr. Ziemer, as counsel for Willow Valley, you may present your evidence and testimony.
Mr. President, if I could, just with one point with regard to the exhibits, I placed there for each of the council members that packet, and the packet you identified as Exhibit 1 actually contains 4. There's our application is Exhibit 1.
Right.
Mr. Hamburger sent me in advance the proof of publication. That is in there as Exhibit 2.
Right.
Exhibit 3 is the drawing. I've given you a blown-up version, and we have one that we can project here as we go through that. And exhibit number 4 is some liquor license listings that I'll testify about as part of our application as well. So all 4 of those are part of that packet. I provided one to the court reporter as well to make a part of the record.
Can you enter those as exhibits accordingly? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Nancy?
You've done this already, but please say your name as you approach the microphone.
Yes, Nancy Keeler.
If you could please introduce yourself and your position with this project.
Hello, counselors. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Nancy Keeler. I am an independent consultant. I've been contracted by Lancaster Equity to represent them in the redevelopment of Southern Market.
Yeah.
Yep.
And could you explain who or what is Lancaster Equity?
Yes. Lancaster Equity is a macro-collaborative community development corporation that was created in response to recommendations by the Mayor's Commission to combat poverty in 2016. It has a vision of Lancaster where communities are stabilized and everyone has an opportunity to thrive. Some of the organizations that are involved with Lancaster Equity include CAP, SACA, the Workforce Development Board, LHOP, the Coalition to End Homelessness, the City Alliance, Community First, HDC, Mid-Atlantic, Tabor, Penn Medicine, Assets, Habitat, as well as having residents as part of their board.
We're here obviously related to a project related to the Southern Market Center. Can you give a little bit of a history Mr. Delfs did a pretty good job, but can you give a little bit of a history with regard to that project and the city's involvement?
In 2017, in January of 2017, Jess King was at Assets at that time, brought me in to do a feasibility study on the redevelopment of Southern Market. The city was looking to sell the building at that time. She had pulled together a panel of individuals to act as a sounding board through the feasibility process, and they gave me 3 objectives in my process. The first was that the project should include equitable economic development, that this should create jobs, and that it should positively impact the neighborhood as it exists currently, that it should respect the history of the building so that we were taking the building back to food and community, which is what it was initially created to support, and that it would just be the best use of space. There's so many ideas for the building that were a waste of the valuable real estate that it really is. We did not go through the initial RFP process with the redevelopment authority. We ended up waiting. Lancaster Equity at that time stepped forward under the leadership of Dan German and said that they would like to carry this project forward either independently or with a partnership. So we moved it forward through the proposal independently until we were approached by Willow Valley just a few weeks before closing with the city, and looked at how we could create a partnership on the project. And what we realized in talking with Willow Valley is that they really had a similar vision to us in how the building could be developed, especially around having a food hall in the center. There were so many alignments in the project, and we realized that Willow Valley was really bringing the resources that were needed to execute this project quickly in a way that Lancaster Equity simply did not have the capacity to do. At that point in time, when we made the purchase of the building, we entered into a master lease agreement with Willow Valley that they would renovate and update the building, and that through partnership we would provide the operations within the building.
Let's talk a little bit about the specific project here and the redevelopment of the Southern Market Center. We provided the council as part of their exhibits and as part of our application a drawing of the layout of the building. But let's talk a little bit about just generally how the project's going to work, and I'm talking specifically about the food hall at this point.
Okay, so the core feature of Southern Market will be a food hall. This is the best use of space as we could see, because of financially it doesn't make sense to take it back to a farmer's market, but this really is a way to bring to life its original function, is to have a food hall in the center. Some of the other uses that will be in the building, just so you can know, and we can go over the plan here to give you an idea. So the food hall will be in the center, and as you can see right in the middle of the food hall will be the bar. We have plans to open up the building, not completely, but to bring it much more open than it is right now when you're in the old council chambers there. In the front, there will be some lobby space that will be additional seating for the food hall as well, and then there's dining area on South Queen Street. There will be 2 retail spaces in the front, roughly 800 square feet each, that will have complementary products and services to what's happening in the rest of the building. In the back, we have 3 classrooms as they're marked here. What we're really looking at is for this to be a core feature of creating a third space at Southern Market, so that the community rooms can be used to dynamically engage the community and make sure that people who maybe can't afford to eat at the food hall have other reasons why they're coming into the space and participating. There's the commercial kitchen in the back, which is necessary for the production in the food hall. And
yeah, I think we have. We want to just quickly jump to this. Is there another page that has the second floor? There you go. Perfect.
On the second floor, we have assets will be in the front, in part of the space that was previously where the Lancaster Chamber was. Lancaster Works, which is a organization out of assets, will also be in that adjacent space. Lancaster Equity will have offices there. Willow Valley will also have offices at Southern Market. There will be a number of co-working spaces, which you can see listed in the green-gray color that's up there. And then there will also be maker spaces in the back corner you can see over here. The office spaces on the second floor will have some various meeting rooms and things like that, and a kitchen as well to help them function well.
And I think there's one more. There's a third floor.
Yes, the third floor is additional assets in Lancaster Work office space.
Just briefly, the application that we submitted to the city talked some of the I'll say specifics about hours, days, those kind of things. Can you comment briefly on what your understanding of the hours and the operation will be of the food hall?
Yes. So the food hall will serve 3 meals a day. It'll be open 7 days a week. And it'll have seating for approximately 200 people. If you want to go back to the food hall section or the ground floor, yes. So there'll be a variety of seating options between tabletops, high tops, and the standard level low tops. There will also be bar seating and some booth seating. There will be 10 stalls located in the food hall. And what we're looking to do with a food hall, how many of you are familiar with this concept of a food hall or have been to one? So there's a whole range of how these operate. What we're really looking to do is to create an incubation space. So this would be for businesses to start up, that they would have a stall, they would have access to the shared commercial kitchen, but they would have a stall, and that would be their business. And we're looking to have specifically local and ethnically driven flavors in this food hall.
We'll touch on this a little bit later, but the liquor license component of this, can you discuss briefly why a liquor license is an important component of the overall project?
Every expert that we talked to about this said that for a viable food hall, it has to have a liquor license. And there's 2 primary reasons why. First of all, the only way you get income in a food hall if you don't have a liquor license is through stall rentals. So having staffing, maintenance, all of the things that make basically a restaurant function, and then the only way that you can raise income for it is through stall rentals, is unsustainable for the stall rentals. What the liquor license and alcohol sales allows is additional revenue that would then subsidize the cost for the stall holders. We want the stall holders to thrive and succeed. If the rental rate is too high for them to thrive and succeed, that kills the business model of the food hall. On the other side of that, you have the guest experience and the stall holder experience. Having a liquor license draws more people into the space. It causes them to stay in the space longer, and there's some estimates that when patrons are in a place that sells alcohol, they'll spend up to 25% more on food in the space. So it makes sense not only for us covering costs on the food hall end, but also ensuring greater revenue streams for the food hall at a lower expense rate.
Nancy, can you talk, and you touched on it a moment ago, but can you talk just generally how candidates for the food stands are selected and what their participation would look like?
Lancaster Equity is going to be engaged in the selection of the food stall holders. We are, as I said before, we are very interested in providing opportunity for businesses that may not otherwise have opportunity to open a restaurant in town. As you know, rental rates are rising due to economic pressures. There are certain flavors that aren't necessarily going to be getting a foothold in this city. This is their opportunity. This is an opportunity for the city to have different tastes. In the selection process, Lancaster Equity will be pulling together it will be a panel of experts around startups and lending and the different pieces to understand what is needed for a business to succeed as an entrepreneur in this space, that we're giving everyone the best foot forward in making sure that we're selecting businesses that can succeed.
Do you have an indication based on the research and the background work that Lancaster Equity and you have done as part of this project as to potential job creation, the space?
Yes. So we've seen a very similar model to what we're interested in doing, and looking at how food halls that are very similarly sized, similar expectations around operating on the food hall side and on the stall side. There's typically between 80 and 120 employees in the food hall alone. If we take into account the retail spaces, Lancaster Equity, Lancaster Works, assets, and Willow Valley also having employment in the building, it's between 140 to 180 full-time and part-time jobs at Southern Market. The other added benefit, which is, I think, pretty spectacular, is that with Lancaster Works being in the building, they are providing temp jobs for 40 and 50 people a day right now, with expectation that that number will increase. So that will also be happening out of Southern Market. And then the other piece is that Willow Valley plans to set up shuttle service from Southern Market in the same way that High has set up shuttle service. So individuals living in walking distance can walk there, and if they have a job at Willow Valley, they can take a free shuttle ride to work.
In terms of the neighborhood impact of this particular project, can you comment a little bit on what what your research has borne out for neighborhood impact?
The initial feasibility study looked at there are a lot of underutilized and blighted buildings right around Southern Market. And when you take account of that, you realize that there's not a lot to be displaced when it comes to other businesses. There's a tremendous need to backfill and create more industry. So Southern Market is very uniquely positioned because not only is it in the business district, but it is also in probably one of the most densely populated blocks in the city. So what we're looking to do is to have Southern Market be an anchor to create organic economic development. And it can do that through increasing quality of life for the neighborhood through access to better amenities, job opportunities, as well as improved safety through increased foot traffic. The building's going to have programming that's specifically targeted to the neighborhood and to residents in the city, as well as to businesses. And so it's creating an open dynamic and an open flow of pulling people in to a part of town that that often gets driven right past, or people are not taking the time to spend their money and to go there and be. And this development project will allow that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
John. Thank you, Mrs. Keeler.
John, if you could please introduce yourself.
Yep. Good evening, President, Councilors, Mayor. My name is John Swanson. I'm CEO of Willow Valley Living. We are the management and development company for Willow Valley Communities, the applicant this evening. Just by way of information, Willow Valley Communities does have experience owning a liquor license. Since 2015, we've had a liquor license down on our Manor campus, a continuing care retirement community license. And during that period of time, we've had no citations from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. Chris and Nancy have done a fantastic job describing the project, some of the objectives and the goals behind this project. So I'm going to focus a little bit more detail on our role in particular, and then talk for a few moments about financial feasibility and some of the financial aspects of this. First of all, our role in the project, as was described by Nancy, is to provide a funding source for the full restoration of the Southern Market Center, both inside and the exterior restoration of that building. We are also acting in this project as developer of the project, and as well as the manager managing the operations throughout the building. Nancy described all the elements of the building. I won't get into that. And she also talked about the research that's been done over the last year plus as we've been in the planning process for this project. And we have done extensive research. We've talked to a number of food hall operators who are operating incubator food halls around the country. And as was mentioned earlier, liquor sales within a food hall is absolutely essential to the success of the food hall. The liquor sales do provide cash flow. And in this model, what we're trying to do is execute it in a way that the stand holders' cost to entry, their barriers to entry into the culinary field are brought down to as low cost as possible. So those liquor sales will go back into the operations in supporting the operations throughout the building. The cost of the liquor license if one were to be available on the open market, it's my understanding they're approximately $350,000. There is a cost associated with this license, which is my understanding it's $50,000. That extra $300,000 cost, if we were to incur that, would fall on the operations side of the ledger. So it's not part of the bricks and mortar, it's not part of FF&E in the project, so it falls on the operations side of the ledger, which means now we have to build that into the pricing for the stand holders in terms of what they will be asked to pay in terms of rent and supporting some of the other common area maintenance charges within the building. So this is an important part of this project for us, a very important part. Timing, we're looking at beginning work as soon as we receive all the entitlements that are necessary to begin demo work. There is a significant amount of demo work that will be needed within the building. Nancy described opening up the Grand Hall back to its original space. We know that those curved roof trusses are really one of the key architectural features of that building. We want to open up the food hall to see those boat trusses. So we're looking at getting started as soon as possible, and our hope is that by the spring of 2021, we will have this food hall up and operational. A couple of points regarding this economic development liquor license that I think bear mentioning. I mentioned there is a fee to acquire it. It's also non-transferable, so it has no market value on the free market. Also, there's a requirement that 50% of the sales be by way more 50% or more through food and non-alcoholic beverages. So this is not a bar, although it's integral to the operations of the food hall. This is a food-focused entity. Once again, I just want to thank you for your entertaining our application, and we're very excited to see the southern market once again become a magnet for community engagement and really something that's very much city and consumer focused. So thank you. Anything else you want me to cover?
You're good.
Okay.
Thank you. Good job. Jonathan? Jonathan, if you could please introduce yourself and your position, your role in this project.
Yeah. Good evening. I'm Jonathan Coleman. I am the co-CEO of Assets. We are one of the primary tenants of the building. I'm also on the board of Lancaster Equity.
And can you describe, Nancy mentioned Assets has a physical space, or will have a physical space in this building. Can you describe Assets' role in this project?
Sure. Assets, part of the mission of Assets is to support local entrepreneurs, specifically diverse and underrepresented entrepreneurs, to help them start and grow businesses as an economic development role within this community. So we've been doing that work for 27 years here in Lancaster. So we will continue to do that in Southern Market, in our space on the second floor of Southern Market. As it pertains to this particular project in the food hall, we have services and resources for entrepreneurs, training, consulting, and financing for entrepreneurs, again, targeted to women and people of color. So as the stand holders will largely represent that target market as well, we anticipate that we will be able to support the entrepreneurs who are the stand holders in the building.
And can you describe, based on your experience with Assets and your role with that organization, what you think the economic benefits to both the city and the community would be by this project?
Yeah, in Lancaster City, we need to see more businesses owned by the people who live in the city and represent the communities that live here, that are citizens of the city. And so if we can incubate businesses owned and operated by Lancaster City residents and by communities who have been left behind in the business ownership landscape here in the city, we will see the gains from economic growth be more equally spread amongst all communities in the city. And so this is a piece of that struggle to ensure that the gains that we see through the economic growth, which has been profound here, are equally shared.
And last, can you talk about what you believe the value of this project would be to the entrepreneurs and the startups? I think you addressed it a little bit, but specific to the food and the restaurant service industry.
Yeah, so in our work at Assets, if there's the type of industry, the industry type of most of the entrepreneurs, or the most common industry type that we work with, the folks coming in with an entrepreneurial idea that they would like to start, food is the most popular. And it's also, they soon find out as we start to help them run the numbers, it's also one of the most expensive and most difficult to get going at a large scale. So a project like this, where there's a low barrier of entry from a cost perspective, is vital to helping those creative, talented food entrepreneurs and chefs be able to actually get their start, have a place to cook and a place to serve their food, which is the essential first step in starting a successful food-based business. This is the perfect setup for that.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Marshall? Kindly introduce yourself.
Sure. Good evening, councilors. I'm Marshall Snively, the president of Lancaster City Alliance, and I also serve on the board of Lancaster Equity.
Marshall, I think you could expand a bit on the economic development potential benefit to the city and the community here as part of this project. I think you're somewhat uniquely situated to comment on that a bit.
Well, as Lancaster City Alliance, one of our largest bodies of work, as I'm sure you all know, or most of you know, is the management of the city's economic development strategic plan, Building on Strength. This is a 15-year plan that was developed and implemented with many partners throughout the city, including much of the board of Lancaster Equity. We are 5 years into the plan now, and the goals and aspirations of those plans are centered on investment occurring not only in downtown, but in other areas of the city, and many of those areas which haven't seen investment in decades, but it's also about elevating our residents and giving them opportunities to grow business and personal wealth.
And can you talk a little bit about how this particular project fits within that strategic plan for the city?
Absolutely. Building on Strength is focusing on 4 broad strategies. One is your traditional economic development, is highlighting underutilized properties for investment, is streamlining processes, and ensuring that we know and are utilizing all of the tools that are available to support economic growth throughout the city. The second is our entrepreneurs, ensuring that the city is a place where our entrepreneurs can grow and thrive. The third is continuing to market the city as a great place to live, as a great place to invest, and as a great place to visit. And then fourth is ensuring a great quality of life for our residents and an inviting environment for all who live, work, and come here. The Southern Market Center is unique in that it's a project that touches each of these strategies. It's a long underutilized property. It's at a key site at a critical intersection that can make a great connection between downtown and the southern part of the city. The purpose of the Economic Development Strategic Plan is to support entrepreneurs in the city with a focus on people of color and women-owned businesses. This is a great opportunity to do that. Not only those in the culinary field to support the food hall, but also clients that work directly with Assets and other partners that support the entrepreneurial community in the city. Obviously, the food hall will create yet another attraction and amenity, adding to the marketability of Lancaster. And not only will this create opportunities for city residents looking to open food-related businesses, but will create jobs, and with Lancaster Works also there, will provide additional employment support for city residents. So the redevelopment of Southern Market Center will be a true community center. It's making this building public again. It's adding street life to an area that's pretty dark right now. But importantly, it provides opportunities for entrepreneurs and for Lancaster community use. This project is the quintessential example of true economic development, and this economic development liquor license is a critical tool to make this happen in a way that it remains accessible for not only our entrepreneurs, but for the overall success of this project.
Great. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Snively.
I certainly don't have much more to add. I think they've done a pretty good job of explaining the project, its benefits to the city. I will clean up a couple of small pieces. One, I just wanted to note for the record, in addition to the legal notice that was provided, there was a notice of this hearing that was posted at the actual Southern Market Center. Just wanted to make sure that was part of the record. I'll address briefly the Exhibit 4 that's with my packet. I did want to provide some listings. I frequently get solicitations for liquor license sales because of the work that I do in the hospitality segment. I wanted to provide council with some examples of what licenses are currently selling for, but as John noted, it's really not the value of those licenses on the market that's the problem here. It's the fact that the way this operation is set up that those become economically infeasible as part of the project as was described. The other thing I wanted to touch on as part of the application that the city code requires is I provided a list of liquor licenses that are currently held in safekeeping, and I just wanted to, for council's benefit, address those. There are currently 9 licenses held in safekeeping in Lancaster City. 2 of them are not the same, or actually 3 of them are not the same type of license that would be used here. One of them is a brewery license for Our Town Brewery. Another one was a hotel license at on South Prince Street. Another one was the former Rendezvous, which was a beer-only license. So different category of license. Of the other ones that were listed in safekeeping, I believe all of those, there's only one that I can't say with 100% certainty, but I believe all of the rest of those are either under agreement or aren't actually for sale. They're tied to a project, or they're under agreement, or they're already sold and they're waiting for the license to actually come to market. So I wanted to highlight that simply to say that that there aren't really, despite the abundance of licenses in the city, there's really not that many that are sitting sort of waiting for sale, again, even if the economics of the project would support it. Last thing, I would just say that, given all the testimony that's been presented, I think that it establishes that this project and the license specifically issued for this project would serve an economic development purpose. And the other standard that's set out in the city code is that it would not be adverse to the welfare, health, peace, and morals of the city or its inhabitants. I think quite to the contrary, it would be quite the benefit to the city inhabitants. So with that, we'd ask for council's approval. And if there's any questions or any comments from either the council members or the public, we'd be happy to address those too.
Great. Before we move forward, first of all, thank you, Mr. Ziemer, and thank you to all of you, and to our recorder, sir, thank you. We will be actually, once we close the hearing, we will actually be voting on the item further down in the legislative agenda, just so everybody is aware of that. Now is the period when council members will be able to ask questions of council and any of the witnesses present, as well as Mr. Delfs. And I'll take the first one if council will allow, and that is just so in describing, the what other licenses are held in safekeeping, that indeed there are only 6 of that category, and to your knowledge, none of them are actually available sale. You're essentially establishing that you've exhausted reasonable means as per the PA Liquor Control Board guidance?
So, yeah, Mr. President, that is true. That's the point of demonstrating that, although I would note that the issuance of this license, there is a subsequent procedure that is in front of the Liquor Control Board. One of the precursors for the issuance of an economic development license by the state is that the project either be located in a Keystone Opportunity Zone or an enterprise zone. If that's the case, there is no need to come in front of the municipality in which that project is located to get that initial approval. Here, in this situation, Southern Market Center doesn't fit in either of those 2 zones, and therefore the more generic requirement that the PLCB has is that the municipality simply find and pass a resolution that indicates that the project is one of economic development, that they, in your more micro sort of view, believe that this would be one that would support economic development within that municipality. Beyond that, at the Liquor Control Board level, there will be a subsequent hearing where that standard that you just mentioned, exhausting reasonable means, will become a bit more relevant. But to your point, even at this level, we have gone to some extent, but again, even in that context, the exhausting reasonable means, I would argue and would submit to council, is one of the circumstances related to the project. In other words, even if there are licenses that are available for purchase, even if those licenses in safekeeping or otherwise were available in the market, the more critical analysis, I believe, and I believe what's provided in the liquor code, is that it's not economically feasible for this particular project. And I think John's testimony and others indicated why the added cost to that simply makes the motivations here and the opportunities that are available in this project that much more difficult for the individual standholders, which is what they're trying to support. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but yes.
No, I appreciate it. Before I was on council, so sitting there watching up here, I remember I'm just editorializing here, Mr. Andre Pham that owns Issei coming to this body and indeed applying for a liquor license, in part because the cost was so high that he, as a fairly young entrepreneur of color, simply could not make that happen, make the twain meet to continue conducting his business. So certainly that's an admirable goal. So I'll ask one more question, and then I'll pass it off to my colleagues. From a project standpoint, how do we know that there will be sort of the promised or anticipated impact specifically on local businesses and on communities of color? What's built into the project to ensure that that is the case? Because I think that's part of council's interest in seeing that this project goes forward.
Come on. Yeah, please.
Please.
That's better you than me.
Thank you. That's a good question. Lancaster Equity, as part of the partnership with Willow Valley, will be part of the selection process for food hall, for the stalls in the food hall. And Lancaster Equity's core mission and values are around exactly what you're talking about. So we're working to ensure, and as we partnered, that was one of the key pieces for us, was to ensure that the vision for this project was carried through and that we had a stake in that as an organization.
Thank you.
I'd also note that Lancaster Equity is the owner of the property, so their partnership is not likely to end anytime soon, for what it's worth.
Council.
I don't have a question because you asked it, but a comment. I think the surprisingly enough, I was in a place very similar to this in December in New York, and it was the first time that I had ever been there. So, and it was thriving. So I commend you on that. And I know that assets will do a good job because I was in the first class 27 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Ziemer. Can you clarify how many economic development licenses are available to apply for?
Yeah, so the way the economic development licenses work is the PLCB will issue up to 2 per county per year. It's a sort of a first-come, first-served kind of basis, and the PLCB, particularly more recently, has gotten particularly, I don't know what the correct adjective is, they scrutinize those applications pretty severely. They want to ensure that the projects are, in fact, one of an economic development purpose, and that they aren't just an individual who's not happy with the current market prices, because they have certainly increased. Lancaster County is a good example of that recently. And they want to make sure that it's not just someone looking for a workaround as a means to avoid having to pay market value for a liquor license. So they issue up to 2 a year. The applications are taken sort of en masse by a quarter. So all the applications that come in the first quarter are then heard by the PLCB, and they will pick the projects. They don't have to issue any. They will pick the ones that they believe qualify, and I guess if there's more than are available, they'll pick the 2 that they believe best qualify. Once they're issued, they're not transferable, as John said, so they really have no market value. They are issued to a specific holder for a specific project. They cannot be transferred, so there's no resale value to compete with other licenses that are currently on the market. I don't know if that answers your question fully, but yeah.
Thank you. And then my final question would be, with the various stakeholders that are involved, who is the actual owner of the license and who's actually selling the alcohol within Southern Market?
Yeah, good question. So the applicant here and the applicant to the PLCB for the license will be Willow Valley Communities. And the reason for that is because The PLCB requires that the license be held by the entity or the individual that's actually operating the liquor sales and that component of the business. So in this particular case, given the partnership and the setup of the project, it really had to be Willow Valley Communities. The PLCB is nothing if not strict about this, the concept of loaning out or leasing or otherwise sort of assigning the rights to use a liquor license. They require that the applicant in fact be the one that is using and operating it. So given that Willow Valley Communities has a background obviously in the hospitality business, although a bit separate or a bit different, they were certainly the right sort of entity in this partnership to be the one to own and to operate the license.
So does that mean if I open up my own stall, I would not be able to sell any alcohol within my stall?
Correct. The individual stand holders would not sell alcohol. Their business would be their food or other offerings. The alcohol sales would be centered to the bar area and would be isolated there. I think that both it's a bit easier to manage from an operational standpoint. And also, I mean, various PLCB regulations and things in terms of the sales of alcohol don't really make it that convenient or really that feasible to have the individual stand holders selling any of that. All of those sales will be centered at the bar location.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Diaz.
Hi. Have you done any type of studies regarding the traffic in that area once this is open?
Vehicle traffic?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
So you don't know or foresee what type of traffic will be coming in and out of that area?
John, why don't you come up and take that?
At this time, we've not done a traffic study.
And in regards also the schools that are nearby and children, do you foresee any issues regarding kids going in and out, or if they're trying to explore, what exactly will you be planning to do to make sure that kids don't go in there for fun or
Mm-hmm.
to prevent any type of problems?
I mean, as part of our managing of the building or property management work, we'll be monitoring the traffic in and out of the building to make sure there's not anything inappropriate happening within the building. We have a very good and close relationship with Carter McRae School. We have numerous resident volunteers in the classrooms, both academic tutors and music tutors. So we have a very good working relationship with the administration and Carter McRae in particular. So any issues that may arise, which I'm not anticipating, but if they do, we would certainly be able to work through those with the administration there at Carter McRae if they involve the school children.
One more question.
Sure.
In the safety, any type of safety, like, do you foresee like a security guard or, the area where you're at, there are incidents that have occurred, and I'm just wondering how that's going to play out.
Yeah, we're anticipating having some security element there at the building, not only within the building, but also the perimeter of the building as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Mr. Swanson, before
Yes.
you go, I think a reasonable follow-up question to Councilor Diaz's question is, in the establishment where you operate the existing liquor license, you mentioned that you've had no citations and you train all your employees on the necessary identification procedures because it is a residential neighborhood and we just want to make sure that there's the school, there's the church, and indeed there's just a food hall that a teenager might wander into, and just to be sure that employees are in fact screening for that.
Yes. We're very familiar with that. The type of license that we currently have is a very restrictive license. So not only age qualified, but also you have to meet certain criteria in terms of being a guest of a resident or a guest of a team member at Willow Valley. So we're very familiar with controlling the traffic to our to our bar on our campus now. So, and our staff is fully trained.
Great, thank you. Did you have a?
This is a family-friendly venue that we fully anticipate this to be an intergenerational space and not one limited just to 21 and above. That's been our vision, for this to be a community space. The alcohol sales are essential in providing additional income, but not to the detriment of children being in the space.
I'd also just sort of Mr. Royal's point, the centralized alcohol sales through the management, I think, also helps with that, because you then can control the training through RAMP, the PLCB's RAMP, Responsible Alcohol Management Program training, and otherwise. So I think having that centralized actually benefits, Ms. Diaz, to your point as well, in trying to control the employees who are responsible for that, the day-to-day, those transactional sales of alcohol. So,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I have here the average price for food, but don't see the cost for the stall for a cook. Do you know how much that would be?
I don't know that those numbers have been finalized, but John, I'll defer to you.
Just trying to review like affordability.
Yeah, the research we've done and what we've seen in other food hall operations is generally these are short-term leases or licensing agreements, and the rent, in some cases, there's a base rent plus a percentage of revenue. In some cases, it's totally based upon a percentage of revenue. Those are details we're still working through in terms of zeroing in on what type of license or lease we'll be executing with the stand holders. But it's either going to be base rent plus some percentage of revenue or a straight percentage of revenue.
But we don't necessarily have a ballpark for how much base rent will
We do have a ballpark. On a percentage of revenue basis, what we've seen is anywhere between 20 and 30%.
Thank you. My second question is going back to this particular type of license. Is there an end date at which you'll have to reapply?
There's not. There is an ongoing reporting requirement. The PLCB, John mentioned earlier, the requirement of that 50% threshold, meaning your food and non-alcoholic beverage sales have to be at least 50% of your total sales. That's an annual reporting requirement. So if at any time you don't meet that reporting requirement, the PLCB can essentially withdraw your eligibility for the license. But there's not a set term or an identified end date for the license. So long as you continue to meet the requirements, you can continue to operate.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from other counselors?
Just a comment. I'm well aware of all the stakeholders that are involved in this process, and it seems that kind of seeing Southern Market come from the beginning to where it is now and through this process, there's still a lot of work to do, but definitely commend the different stakeholders in trying to make this project happen and benefit the community as a whole. So thank you.
Great. This is, thank you. We'll come to public comment in a second. Thank you for your thoroughness. I will say, not as a condition, not to advertise any condition of approval on my part, or as a referendum on the project as a whole. Consider, to the applicants, I would just ask you to consider gender-neutral or gender-affirming restrooms somewhere within the floor plan. So I'll just say that out loud. Thank you. Great. We now move to the period where we take comment from the public. We'll begin with Ms. Copenhaver. Mr. Ziemer, if you would.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Get out of the way. No, that's okay.
April Copenhaver, 19-21 North Mulberry Street and 253 255 West King Street. So the devil's always in the details, so I just have to ask some logistical questions because I had actually thought about opening an incubator kitchen on West King Street because we do have a lot of diversity within our community, and I've always been committed to serving them as well. So when you answered about the percentage of the revenue, you said 20 to 30, but we still didn't get $1 per square footage or what the rent would be. Could you share that with us?
Because these stalls are relatively small in terms of their square footage, when you look at it on a per square foot basis, which is not how the industry basically looks at it, the per square footage cost per square foot is high because it's 200 or so square feet in a stall. So I can't really give you a number in terms of how the pricing will translate on a per square foot basis.
Are you making $500, $800, $1,000? I mean, when you're making up a big plan like this, you have to include finances, and so how do you justify that? Like, you have to plug in a number at some point. What number do you plug in?
On a per stall basis, I'd have to go back through our projections to come up with a per stall.
Because we have to keep it at a very low rate so they can afford it.
That's right. I mean, that's the goal here is to...
Not a triple net lease. It would just be a one, and their utilities would be included.
That's right.
Is there water in each of the stalls?
Yes.
How do they wash their hands?
Yes.
Okay, there's water. Yeah. Okay, now you talked about a meal 3 times a day at this large food hall. Okay, but you're going to have professional chefs in that kitchen producing public food 3 times a day. Where are these stall holders going to be cooking? And are they going to be trained to use your kitchen? And logistically, how are you going to do that if people all want to serve hot food to the visitors?
Well, there's a couple challenges with the space. Because it's mixed-use space, we have to be concerned about odors coming from the food hall.
Ventilation.
Ventilation, exactly. So we've decided to go with the centralized kitchen that'll be utilized by all the stall, the vendors.
So they all have to go through Safe Serve, and they all have to go through all this.
Yeah, will be inspected.
Yes, so now we need to get all of them licensed and approved, and we're going to have a language barrier. There's over 80 languages spoken in the Lancaster School District. Okay, so are you going to be building into your budget interpreters and people that will speak languages so they understand what's the process?
I mean, that's a good point.
It's a good
point. And it's not one that we've necessarily talked about.
It's a valid point, yes.
And that will have to be considered as part of the vetting process for the
designing the
stakeholders.
kitchen, where is this kitchen? I couldn't quite put
It's in the top right-hand corner.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so it's going to have to be very designed very specifically to a lot of hands doing a lot of things at the same time.
Yeah.
This is not a normal commercial kitchen, and I
No.
love Willow Valley, and I've acknowledged you for generations. What a great job you do for the elderly as well as the public when it was the restaurant. So this is a real big challenge.
Yeah, Mr. Swanson, hold on. I'm gonna stop you right there, and I'm gonna say with this last response, I'm gonna terminate this question because I want to make sure that we keep it germane to the liquor license application.
Okay.
Please answer. Thank you.
We do recognize what we don't know. So as a part of this process, we've engaged an operator of multiple food halls across the country to work with us as a design consultant on the project. So they're working with us on designing the kitchen, and this model is the model that they use in their food halls with the centralized kitchen and the minimal amount of cooking in each of the stalls. But as you mentioned, ventilation's critical here, so we're trying to control that in the centralized kitchen.
Will the stalls, because they're limited in size, will they be able to use a place to have a little table and chairs so the people buying their food could sit near them? And
I'm sorry, Mr. Swanson,
it's
Ms.
just
Silva,
logistics.
I feel like we're just, yes, and actually I found Mr. Swanson to be very accessible, and I would encourage the two of you to discuss the more specific logistic questions either after the meeting or after the hearing. I just want to make sure that we make time for other public comments and the rest of the council meeting. Thank you. Any other public comments on the liquor license application? Going once. Going twice. Okay. Mr. Ziemer, as counsel, do you have any final comments or statements before I close testimony for this public hearing?
I don't. I just appreciate the time that you've afforded us. I've taken more than I wanted to, but I wanted to make sure the council had the full breadth of the presentation here and the information for the project. So no, I don't.
No,
Thank you.
okay. We're here for a long time, not a good time. I've hereby closed this public hearing and thank the participants. We will vote on this under, what is that, Title 4, Section C. Moving right along to reports of committees of council meetings held on March 2nd, 2020. We'll begin with the Public Safety Committee. Councilor Garcia Molina.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Give me just 1 second to log into my laptop. So the Public Safety Committee did meet. We didn't vote on anything particular, but there was 2 things that we asked from Chief Jared Berkeyheiser to report back to us. One of those was specifically the enforcement of the marijuana ordinance, but also we were taking a look at aggressive panhandling. When looking at where and to whom these citations were enforced, in 2019, there were 105 citations. 88 of those went to men, and then 17 went to women. Geographically, we often like to look at where these are happening. The majority were happening in the southeast with 45, and then 33 happened in the southwest, 7 in the northeast, 9 in the northwest, and that northwest extension saw 2. So something also to note, and I don't know if many of you have heard about the youth aid panel, but 3 of those for juveniles did end up going to the youth aid panel, where community members get together and really decide what is the best program moving forward for the youth. So I was really proud of that. And then also in 2019, when looking at charges that came out of the ordinance, there were 45. And then again, another 3 went through that process. The aggressive panhandling was also pretty straightforward. Only 33 citations came out of it, and expectedly they were during the more warmer months of the year. But that's about it. Handing it back to you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Public Works Committee, Councilor Soto. We don't have Councilor Soto this evening. He is excused. I will briefly report on that, if you'll bear with me. The Public Works Committee considered Administration Resolution number 16-2020, authorizing a grant application for Milburn Park renovations, and number 17, authorizing a grant application for the Conestoga Pines Park Master Development Plan. And during that meeting, the grant amount remained unknown. I believe we may have that cleared up on the agenda tonight, but the grant amount still remains unknown and to be determined by project needs. If any other members of the Public Works Committee have identified anything I've neglected to mention, now's your time. All right, and then we'll move right along to Economic Development. Councilor Arroyo.
Mr. President, we did not meet last committee meeting.
All right, thank you. I do not believe, though correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Harris, did the Finance Committee meet on the last committee meeting?
Yes, it did, Mr. President. They discussed the resolutions regarding the Redevelopment Capital Assistance Program.
Mr. Arroyo, do you have any additional details on that?
I do not.
All right. We'll move then into the Community Planning Committee. Councilor Craig.
Thank you so much. Although I was absent, community planning did meet. There was a first reading for Administration Bill number 2, 2020, this evening on the agenda. And the Cities Act 537 Official Sewage Facility Plan, Resolution 14, 2020, 13, 2020, 14, 2020, and 15, 2020.
Right. Thank you. And we'll hear a little bit more detail about those once we get to them on the agenda. Thank you, Councilor Craig. And then we have Personnel Committee. Councilor Diaz.
Yes, Mr. President. The Personnel Committee met on Monday, March 2nd, to review the following nominations for the City Boards, Commission, and Authorities. John LaFever for appointment to the Historical Architectural Review Board for a 3-year term. That will start January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2022. And to the Historical Commission for the 3-year term on January 1st, 2020, and also December 31st, 2022. Linwood Sloan for the appointment of Public Art Advisory Board to complete an unfinished term from February 11th, 2020, and July 31st, 2022. And the next person would be Jeff Cheshire, and I hope that's the way it's pronounced, for the appointment of the Sign Commission to complete an unfinished term from February 11th, 2020 to August 31st, 2022. Mark Stoner for the Human Relations Commission to complete an unfinished term from February 25th, 2020 to September 30th, 2022. And the last person here would be Sam Wilsker for the reappointment of the Noise Control Board for a 5-year term from February 21st, 2019 to February 1st, 2024. Boy, this does sound a long time away from now. I make a motion that all of these appointments be approved.
Second.
Council comments from the public? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Roya.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. My apologies, all. I did skate over finance a little bit. Do want to clarify that the RCAP grant applications were for the fire station renovations as well as for Culleton Park, and we'll hear more about that later on the agenda. We now move into our legislative agenda. First, we are considering items on the Historic District. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Consider the following applications and recommendations from the Historical Architectural Review Board for improvements to properties within the historic districts. And first is Trout CPA, owner of 160 East King Street, and they request installation of new commercial signage on the building storefront. Second is Nick Flores, owner of 135 East Grant Street, and he requests replacement of French doors on the second floor balcony with new vinyl sliding glass doors. And last is Thomas and Cody Baker, owners of 45 South Lime Street, and they request reconstruction of a rear frame enclosure to create a new 2-story addition. And all those applications were recommended for approval by the Historical Architectural Review Board.
I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Council comments from the public? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Harris. That moves us to ordinances for first reading. We begin with Administration Bill Number 2, 2020.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, accepting the offer of dedication of a right-of-way in the form of a deed from PKK LLC for a portion of Grofftown Road, fronting Grantor's real property, known as 1270 Grofftown Road, offered for dedication in connection with a land development and lot add-on plan, and placing the same on the official city plan and declaring it open to public use. And this is a first reading.
Great. We'll then move into resolutions, beginning with Administration Resolution Number 10, 2020.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the mayor and the City of Lancaster to submit the RCAP formal application and business plan for $500,000 to the Commonwealth Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program for the Lancaster City Fire Station project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I think this item is pretty straightforward. We are rebuilding the East and West King fire stations. That's very expensive. We'd like the state to give us some money to do that, so we're applying for a grant to do so. Council comments.
Just one that I'd like to add, if I may, President, which is that we applied for $4 million. We received $500,000, and we are not giving up.
Okay, go get them. Great. From the public. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Administration Resolution Number 11, 2020.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the acceptance of a $500,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania through the Redevelopment Capital Assistance Program for the purpose of Southwest Lancaster City Revitalization Program, authorizing the assignment of $1,050,000 of general fund reserves for the purpose of providing the required match and interim financing necessary for the Culleton Park project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Would the administration or staff like to provide any additional context? Hey, Patrick.
You took the easy one with the last one, so I'll take the more complicated one. As described in the title that Mr. Harris read, this is a resolution that's actually doing three different things for us with the Culleton Park project. The first is very similar to what you did in the immediate prior resolution, which is accepting a $500,000 RCAP grant to the city for the purpose of funding the Culleton Park project, or a portion of the Culleton Park project. For this particular project, as part of the RCAP requirements, we also have to be able to show the Commonwealth that we have sufficient funding in place to be able to cash flow, basically fund the entire project before we pull down any of the RCAP funds from the Commonwealth. This is one of these things where we have to spend the dollars first and then draw down from the state. So they require proof that we can cash flow the entire project. So that $1,050,000 is both the RCAP funding itself and an additional amount to prove that we can that we can cash flow the project. And then the third thing is that they also require some additional contingency to be built into the budget. So that $1,050,000 also includes that contingency amount and the ability for us to finance that. If we actually have to go because of unforeseen costs, we have to go beyond the $3.2 million budget for the project, we will ultimately have to come back to City Council for you to approve funding through some other means, whether that is moving some city general fund capital dollars to increase the budget for this project, or potentially coming back and asking for a supplemental appropriation from the general fund to fund whatever that contingency amount is. But what this does is provides us, and we've sort of vetted this through our consultant that's assigned to us for the RCAP projects, that this will get us over all of the hurdles with the RCAP grant itself. Funding hurdles that may come down the road, we'll have to come back to City Council for.
Okay. Council comments from the public. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Administration Resolution Number 12, 2020.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, approving the issuance of an economic development restaurant liquor license by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board for use at the property known as Southern Market Center, located at 100 South Queen Street, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm sure you've all heard the subject beat to death recently. So the way this works is that if we should pass the resolution supporting this, they will then proceed with our approval and support to the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, just so we're all on the same page. Additional comment from the public on the matter of the economic development liquor license. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. Administration Resolution Number 13, 2020.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the adoption of an amendment to the Act 537 Official Sewage Facilities Plan for the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig, did you want to call anybody from staff to address this matter?
Yes. If Chris is available or Stephen.
Mr. Delps.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Well,
I gave our chief planner, Mr. Smith, the night off, so I will try to do this by memory here. As we talked about during council committee last week, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection recently made a change to its policy. We received a letter in November of last year notifying us of this policy change. Prior to that time, anytime a land development came before the city and required sewer capacity analysis, there was an exemption granted by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. This was based upon construction of the North Pump Station that had happened 3 years ago. We were able to have an exemption for any of these projects that came before us. Now that that policy has been changed, there has to be a sewer planning module done. That is the informal name for an official change to the sewage plan. Now that we are doing this for every project as a routine check at the beginning of the process before we can proceed with the land development to affirm the capacity in the sewer system for that new proposed development. So we notified council at committee that we'll be seeing many more of these coming before you. And there are three tonight, one for the Park City project and for two residential projects on Prince Street. I can address those individually if you'd like, but just wanted to remind you of why these requests are now coming before council, whereas in the past that was not the case.
Thank you, Mr. Delps.
So can we wait a minute? Is it possible that we have the other two, 14 and 15, read in so that they can be explained at the same time?
Councilor Craig, I think if I may, the question really is just for each item, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there sewer capacity or isn't there? And then I think we can run through the three votes pretty quickly.
Okay.
Correct. And just to be clear, city staff did take a look at each of these projects. This was Douglas Smith, our chief planner, and Brian Harner, our utility manager. They did the preliminary analysis and did confirm that there is capacity in the system for each of these projects. The role before the council is to affirm that capacity review has been done appropriately.
Okay. I have a question.
Of course. Councilor Diaz.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Does the EPA come out to look or study anything related to these facilities?
The Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, not to my knowledge, no. They're relying on city staff to do that analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right. From the public at all? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Administration Resolution Number 14, 2020.
Resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the adoption of an amendment to the Act 537 Official Sewage Facilities Plan for the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Council comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Administration Resolution Number 15, 2020.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the adoption of an amendment to the Act 537 Official Sewage Facilities Plan for the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Council comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Administration Resolution Number 16, 2020.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster requesting a Community Conservation Partnership Program grant from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to be used for the Milburn Park Playground renovation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Council. This is a proposal to go after grant funding with the Community Conservation Partnership Program, which has been done in the past at Holly Point, as an example, for them for the Pennsylvania Municipal League during their annual conference to be able to install a playground at the Milburn site, design and install it at the Milburn site. This is a very cost-effective way of getting some very good playground equipment into very needy areas, and we're very proud to be able to co-sponsor it.
Great. I'm going to ask, as we move through this, that you stay up here as we talk about Conestoga Pines, but council comments.
I did have a question. Was there a possibility of you finding out about the parking in and around that particular park?
I will confess that no, I don't have any further information about the parking challenge at that particular park.
Okay. If you can forward something, because I do have some residents that I know personally in that area that have questioned it. So if you can just get some information and send it out to me.
Very good.
I would really appreciate it. Thank
Very
you.
good.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. Any other council comments or questions? Great. From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Administration Resolution Number 17, 2020.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster requesting a Community Conservation Partnership Program grant from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to be used for the Lancaster Waterworks and Conestoga Pines Master Site Development Plan.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Campbell.
Sure. It's a similar request for a grant for a master planning study at the Conestoga Pines site. At Conestoga Pines, that is the one large municipal pool for the city of Lancaster. There are a number of splash pools in other parts of the city, but this is an area that does attract a number of people for recreation purposes. The purpose here is to have a plan for other and additional recreational services in that part of town.
Thank you. Council comments or questions on this matter?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Have we, by any chance, Mr. Campbell, found out the grant request amount?
No. What we would be doing, the application is in April. What we would be doing is soliciting at minimum of 3 proposals, and we would be taking the average of the requested proposal as the submission amount.
Great, thank you.
From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. All right, thank you. That concludes our legislative agenda. We're now into our second public comment period, open for items that have not been addressed on the agenda this evening. Going once. Going twice. Okay, Mayor Sirachi.
Thank you, President, and good evening, councilors. I wanted to provide a little bit of an update related to the COVID-19, and in the midst of these emerging concerns, I just wanted to share a little bit about the city's perspective. Our focus as providers of essential services is ensuring the continuity of those services, focusing on our fire, police, water, and wastewater in particular. We're also following guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and our regular communication with Penn Medicine, Lancaster General, our institutions of higher education, and other local partners as we all continue to communicate and be in touch with one another related to COVID-19. As you are aware, Lancaster County does not have a public health department, and in the midst of these concerns related to the coronavirus, as well as the LNP editorial last week, I've been fielding a number of questions about the city's exploration of a health department, and I wanted to just give you all an update about that. Most state-sanctioned health departments are run by county governments, but cities are also eligible to start health departments if their counties choose not to pursue one. In the absence of a county health department, and as the largest population center in the county, we decided to dig in to better understand the risks and opportunities for city residents. In particular, as a follow-on to our HUD-led grant, and understanding that some of the data that would be helpful for us in implementing the HUD grant would not be permissible to share with the city of Lancaster because we were not a city health department. And so that definitely advanced our efforts to take a look more closely at a city health department. A large part of this, as we've gone through this process, is we found out that there's not been a new health department started in Pennsylvania for more than 20 years. So because of that, there's not really anybody at the Department of Health that knows a process in which to start a new health department. And the funding for a health department, because there has not been an additional allocation of state resources, that funding has been flat. And so if you are starting a new health department, then it is a challenge for the state to figure out where the money would come for that additional health department. All along, this conversation has been predicated that there are essential services that the city is already providing that could be reimbursed by creating our own health department. And so if this was going to be revenue neutral or potentially revenue generating even a little bit, that it would be in the best interest of the city to pursue. So we are still in that process of discernment. Our city has a larger population of children and youth than the county and the state, a larger working age population between the ages of 20 and 64, a smaller population of older adults compared with the county and the state. We have high poverty, and nearly half of the city is challenged by housing affordability. These are all components of social determinants of health, which have a lot to do with our overall health and well-being of city residents writ large. So we've been working closely with Penn Medicine and Lancaster General Health over the past few months to discern what services are already well established in the community and where are the biggest opportunities to improve the lives of our residents. As I mentioned, we are still in exploration phase of this process and have not made a determination yet about next steps. And most weighing these two things, both in terms of the health and well-being of our city residents, which is very important, as well as the fiscal sustainability of establishing a health department, given the fiscal constraints of the city at this point. I'd also just add that I have not spoken to any of the county commissioners lately about our efforts to explore a city health department, nor have I talked to them about their interest in potentially looking at this again. All of these issues, aside from COVID-19, are very, very important. And the lead issue in particular is definitely driving and continues to drive our interest in this. But I would just as a reminder, our health officer, Kim Whistler, who is supervised by Mr. Delfs in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department, does a tremendous amount of work doing all of the health inspections for all of the restaurants and food vendors here in the city. She is responsible for vector control. She is responsible for containing Zika and many other things. These are all things that the City Health Department does as part of our service to maintaining the health and well-being of the city. And there is definitely room for more opportunity. And if COVID-19 and the coronavirus, as it's commonly known, is an impetus for us to continue to have these conversations and to move these conversations beyond the city to the county, I would welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I will use my time to briefly wax poetic about the fact that hospital capacity, the affordability of health care, and paid sick leave are important to a community's response and indeed a nation's response to just such an outbreak as this. So if you're worried about this, I would say as much as you are washing your hands and coughing into your elbows and taking protections, to the 10 of you that are still here, give your state and federal representatives a holler about why those things are important. Council comments.
Well, I can tell you, being in the hospital on a daily basis, it can be very hard. Everybody's starting to wear a mask around. Usually I don't, unless I'm going into a patient's room. But it has brought to the attention that even the employees, if they decide to go abroad, they will come back and they will be at home and they will be sequestered until 14 days after. I guess that would be the time of incubation and making sure that everybody's going to be okay. And that's till September.
Thank you. Good to know. Any other council comments? I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.